Good evening, everybody. This is BB True Crime episode. I'm not even going to joke. I don't even know what number is, Beth. Tell me, please.
36.
36. We are
coming up slowly to a special episode.
Looking
episode
forward.
40.
I'm looking forward to it. I can't remember what I requested, but I know it's good because I only have good ideas.
I can't also remember what you requested, but we did write it down.
We did.
So
that's why we
thing.
write things down, though. It's because we know we're not going to remember.
Yeah. But today we got a bit of a different one.
I'm excited.
A bit of a shorter one, probably.
And very different from our last episode, which I'm not going to lie, we fucking need.
Yes.
Oi!
So if you were with us for the last episode, episode 35 was the Columbine High School shooting. God, it was so dark. So dark. We woke up still thinking about it.
I did something on my video game and I was very proud, and I turned around and I went, woohoo! And then I was like, I can't do that. I can't do that because all I can remember is the library now. So now even woohoo has been spoiled for me.
It was woo.
Woo, sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, my bad.
But yeah, so, granted, this one's, not, super happy, but, it's ambiguous, mysterious.
We all know you love a good mystery, though. Everybody seems to love a good mystery.
We do. It's one that will likely never be solved. Take that how you will.
I feel like some things are alright not being solved.
We don't necessarily know what happens, but, we've got some theories we can share with you.
I'm excited.
Have a little chat about it. We'll see. So, I'm going to say the title.
I'm excited.
So, this is the Ghost Ship Mary Celeste.
Ghost Ship.
Right. Also, before anyone comes for me, listen.
Why is anybody coming for you?
Because when I told my boyfriend about this, he was like, it's not true crime. Then I was like, hold on a second, and I explained the case a little bit. And I was like, here's how I can link it to true crime. Because you know what? Some nefarious things may have happened to do with this boat.
Pirates!
Could be pirates.
Pirates!
Could also be is there murder? We don't know.
But the thing is, right, were there people on this ship?
Yes.
Right, are there no longer people on this ship? Missing case.
Right, exactly.
Missing persons. Crime.
No, maybe not, but also, who knows? Could be an accident, like I said, we'll get into it. So, I have a hair in my eye. Help. So.
No, right, I've saved you from enough things the last few days, thank you very much.
True. So, we're going to be exploring, was the Mary Celeste and her crew, because, it's a lady boat.
All boats are ladies. It's unlucky to name it after a man.
Understandable. Was the Mary Celeste and her crew abandoned voluntarily? Or was there something a bit more sinister as the reason? Let's explore.
I feel like it's gonna be sinister.
So first of all, let's go straight into it. We've got to look into the background of this boat.
Tell me.
Right, so.
Tell me.
The Mary Celeste first started being built late in 1890.
Ooh,
so
old
boat.
Old boat.
In Spencer's Island on the shore of Nova Scotia. The ship was constructed of locally felled timber. It had 2 masts, and was launched officially for the first time on May the 18th, 1861. This also could be our oldest case we've done yet.
It is, yeah. I think the earliest before this we've ever gone back is the guy on the beach in Australia, which was 30s, 40s.
Maybe so. So she was actually originally called the Amazon.
Okay.
Not Mary Celeste.
Okay.
And was registered at a nearby Parisborough on June the 10th, 1861. Her registration documents described her as being 99.3 feet in length.
Okay.
25.5 feet broad with a depth of 11.7 feet.
Big ship.
About 198 gross tonnage as well. She was owned by a local consortium of 9 people, headed by Jewess. Among the co-owners was Robert McLennan, the ship's very first captain.
Right.
For her maiden voyage in June 1861, the Amazons, or the Mary Celeste, sailed to 5 islands altogether.
Okay.
And this was to take on a cargo of timber for passage across the Atlantic to London.
Ooh.
So that was its first voyage.
Her maiden voyage.
After supervising the ship's loading, the captain fell ill, and his condition worsened.
An inauspicious start.
Yes, an already not great start for the ship. So the Amazon one was returned to Spencer's Island, where McLennan died on June the 19th. So he died 9 days after his first voyage. Not great.
Voyage.
Shut the fuck up. Not great. So, bit, some people will be like, oh, cursed ship already. Who knows?
I mean, to be fair, what are the chances of you falling ill 9 days into the maiden voyage and then dying?
Yeah, very strange. I'm also gonna sneeze.
Woohoo! Woohoo!
So sorry. Sometimes gotta let that out. That was so loud on the recording. I'm so sorry, guys. God. So, woo!
Jesus, man.
John Nutting Parker then took over as the captain.
Okay.
And resumed the voyage to London. In the course of which the Amazon did encounter further misadventures. So it's already not going great for the boat.
Yeah.
The boat's already going through it. She collided with fishing equipment in the Narrows off Eastport, Maine, after leaving London. Also then ran into and sank a brig in the English Channel. So that's 2 injuries in that one travel.
So we've had fishing.
Yes.
And then a whole boat. A brig is a small boat.
Yes.
So that is a whole boat.
Sank a boat.
Sank a boat.
Yeah. So that's, it's already not going great, this boat.
We're struggling.
Yeah.
We're struggling. Straight out the gate, we're struggling.
So Parker remained the captain for 2 years. And then the captain sort of changed over. And then became William Thompson, who stayed in command until 1987. That is wrong. That would have been like 100 years.
I was going to say
1887.
Yeah.
That was a typo. My bad.
Boy.
Suddenly, we went forward 100 years.
The most long-lived man in existence.
Honestly. So October 1867.
Okay.
At Cape Breton Island, the Amazon was driven ashore in a storm. Once again, another injury. And was so badly damaged that her owners actually abandoned her as a wreck.
Damn.
So, already not the best.
Damn.
So, on October 15th of the same year, she was acquired as a derelict boat by Alexander McBean.
Who didn't know what the fuck he was getting into.
Nope. Within a month, he had sold the wreck to a local businessman, who in November the next year sold it to Richard Haynes, who was an American mariner from New York. He paid about $1,750 for the wreck, which at that time, I can imagine, was quite a lot.
Yeah.
And then spent $8,825 restoring it.
Christ almighty.
Yep. He made himself her captain, and in December 1868 register her with the Collector of the Port of New York as an American vessel, under a new name, the Mary Celeste. The ship was then seized and sold to a consortium for 3 years, of which time there was no record of what happened to the boat or if it went on any journeys in this time. So now we're at 1872.
Okay.
The ship went a major refit.
Okay.
So, because obviously it was very badly damaged. You know, he'd repaired it, but I'm going to assume to its like original state, and like not massively like
let's one up this ship.
So now it's getting a big improvement. The improvement refit cost about $10,000, which made her a lot bigger of a ship. Her length was now increased to 103 feet. Her breadth was now increased to 25 feet. Her depth was increased to 16.2 feet.
Jesus.
Amongst those changes, they added a second deck. And an inspector's report refers to extensions. Right, don't laugh, because this is going to sound so mature. A poop deck.
That's what it's called?
Yep. Don't know what that does, but cool. It had new transoms, and there was a massive replacement of many of the original timbers. They also got a new captain, who is sort of the OG of the story.
Okay.
And one of our missing people.
Ah.
The captain, Benjamin Spooner Briggs.
Spooner?
So, we got a little bit of background about Briggs.
Okay.
Since he is the main captain.
El Capitan!
And one of those who went missing.
Rip.
So Benjamin Briggs was born in Wareham in Massachusetts on April 24th, 1835. He was one of 5 sons of another sea captain, Nathan Briggs. All but one of his sons went to sea. 2 became captains.
Okay.
Christian, he was Christian, he was a Christian man. Though he did marry his cousin. Maybe that was normal at the time.
I mean, to be fair, have you met the royal family? Oof.
I try not to. So he did marry his cousin, called Sarah Elizabeth Cobb in 1862. They had 2 children together. They had Arthur in September 1865 and Sophia Matilda in October 1870.
Cute. Arthur and Sophia.
Yes.
Adorable names.
Briggs had a very high reputation and high standing as a captain.
Nice.
Though he often considered retiring around the time he got the Mary Celeste, because he wanted to open a business with a sea fellow called Oliver. However, they both decided, they changed their mind. They decided to put their money that they were going to put into retirement and their retirement business into a ship.
Oh, that was the mistake they made.
It really was. October 1872, Benjamin then took voyage and command of the Mary Celeste for the first time, and her first trip following the New York massive refit that she had. So it's the first time she's been out.
Okay.
And that was to take her to Genoa in Italy. Genoa?
Geneva?
No idea. You know what? We don't have time for
It's
this.
Geneva. It's
I don't think it is. It's right at the top.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
No, it's not. It is not.
It's not Geneva.
He arranged for his wife and his infant daughter to accompany him.
Okay.
But not the son. Take
Rip
that how
off
you
then.
will, yeah. His school-age son was left at home in the care of his grandmother.
Oh, school age, right, that makes sense. He had his schooling, he couldn't just disappear for a year.
And he then also carefully chose who would be in his crew.
Okay.
However, it would be all of these people who would go missing.
Ah.
Yes, so Arthur did unfortunately lose.
His entire family.
Except for his grandmother.
Except for...
Yeah. So he narrowly escaped whatever the fuck happened.
I don't think he's ever been more grateful for school in his life.
Yeah. So some people that were also on board was first mate Albert Richardson, who was married to a niece of Winchester and had sailed under Briggs before.
Okay.
The second mate was Andrew Gilling, aged about 25, was born in New York and was of Danish extraction.
Danish extraction, right.
Yes.
He had Danish heritage. Okay.
Yes. The steward was a newly married Edward William Head, signed on with a personal recommendation. The 4 general seamen were Germans from the Frisian Islands, the brothers Volkert and Bos Lorenzen, Arian Martens and Gottlieb Gudschral. A later testimony described them as peaceable and first-class sailors.
Nice. That's a good standing.
In a letter to his mother shortly before they set sail, Briggs declared himself very satisfied with the ship and its crew.
Nice.
His wife informed her mother before they set sail that the crew appeared to be very capable.
Nice.
So, the event.
Oh, here we go.
As much as we know.
As much as we
Because,
know
you know
of the
this
event.
was quite some time ago.
Yeah. Not to mention out in the middle of a sea.
Exactly. And the sea is, very unpredictable. So...
Why she hates it.
The sea's a bit scary, but we don't have time to go into that. October 20th, 1872.
Okay.
Briggs and Co. arrived at Pier 50 on the East River in New York City to supervise the loading of the ship's cargo of 1,701 barrels of alcohol onto the Mary Celeste. His wife and infant daughter joined them a week later. And on Sunday, November 3rd, Briggs wrote to his mother to say that they intended to leave on Tuesday, adding that, to quote, "Our vessel is in beautiful trim, and I hope we shall have a fine passage."
Right. They did not.
They did not.
They did not.
On the morning of Tuesday, November 5th, Mary Celeste left Pier 50 with Briggs, his wife and daughter, 7 crew members, and then moved into the New York harbour.
Okay.
The weather was uncertain, so Briggs decided, as captain, to wait for better conditions.
Fair.
Which was, I think, a good shout. So he then anchored the ship just off Staten Island, but while the weather eased up.
Yeah.
The weather then eased up 2 days later, and then the Mary Celeste left the harbour and entered the Atlantic Ocean.
Okay.
So.
We're on our way, boys.
We're going to skip a little bit.
Okay.
To when the ship was found.
We're going to chugga.
Because obviously there's only so much we know about the actual journey and what happened.
I'm intrigued.
So now we go into how the ship was found.
Okay.
A Canadian vessel called De Gratia reached a position of 3820 north, 1715 west. I don't know how you say that, as in like the coordinates. So that's just what you're going to get.
Latitude and longitude, Beth.
Midway between the Azores and the coast of Portugal at about 1 p.m. on Wednesday, December 4th, 1872.
Okay.
Captain Morehouse was the captain of this Canadian boat.
Mm-hmm.
He came on deck, and the helmsman reported that they saw a vessel heading unsteadily towards their boat at a distance of about 6 miles.
Okay.
The ship's erratic movements and the odd way the sails were kind of done on the boat led the Captain Morehouse to suspect that there was something very wrong with the boat.
Yeah. Boats have a look, right? When they're under control and they're just going where they have a look.
Yeah.
Everything's put together, everything's very smooth.
There was something a bit weird about it.
Something hinky in the words of
They
Abby.
could even see from a distance that there was something a bit wrong.
Yeah.
So as the vessel got close, they could see that they couldn't see anyone on deck.
Which was unusual, because it was the middle of the day.
They sent signals, got no reply. So he sent some people that were on his boat. There was a man called DeVow and a second mate, John Wright, in a little boat to go over to that boat to investigate.
Ship.
Yes.
It's a ship, not a boat.
No, they sent them in a little boat.
Yes.
To get to the big boat. Still, it's, it's still the same. The pair then established that this was the Mary Celeste by their name on the stern.
Okay.
They then climbed aboard and found the ship completely deserted. The sails were partially set and in very poor condition.
Okay.
Some sails were missing altogether.
Okay.
A lot of the rigging was damaged.
Right.
They even had ropes hanging loosely over the sides of the boat.
Okay.
The main hatch cover was secure, but the fore and lazarette hatches were open. Their covers beside them on the deck.
Okay.
The ship only had one single lifeboat on it, which was a small yawl, and apparently had been stowed across the main hatch, but it was missing. Whereas the binnacle housing the ship's compass had shifted from its place, and the glass cover of the compass was broken. There was about 3.5 feet of water in the hold, which was significant, but not actually alarming for a ship of that size. In fact, a lot of things said it was kind of normal to have some level of water in the hold, so it wasn't anything really to worry about.
Okay.
Was not sinking the ship.
Okay.
There was a makeshift sounding rod, which is a device used for measuring the amount of water in the hold.
Okay.
Was found abandoned on the deck. So they found the ship's daily log in the mate's cabin. Its final entry was dated 8 a.m. on November the 25th. 9 days earlier.
Okay, that's a while.
Yeah. It recorded Mary Celeste's position as 37 north and 25 west off Santa Maria Island in the Azores, which was nearly 400 nautical miles from where
they found it.
Yes.
Jesus.
So that's quite a distance.
That is.
DeVoe saw that the cabin's interiors were wet and untidy from the water that had entered through the doorways and the skylights, but otherwise were in perfect order. Mm-hmm. He found many personal items around Brigg's cabin, including a sheathed sword under the bed. However, despite personal things still being there, most of the ship's papers were missing, along with the captain's navigational instruments. Plenty of food in the storage was found, so there was, it wasn't anything like that. There was no sign of any fires or violence. Usually for these kind of things in those days, when you found a boat or a vessel or something and it was a wreck or abandoned, if you brought it in somewhere, you would usually get some kind of reward.
Okay.
Especially if that ship had cargo, which it did.
Okay.
So Captain Morehouse decides to send half of his crew over to the Mary Celeste.
Take it back to port.
Yes.
Okay.
And he took his boat also. However, this was obviously this took a bit longer and was a bit more uneven than they liked, just because now both ships kind of only had half a crew each.
Yeah.
Not like the full capacity crew.
Yeah. Things were a bit stretched then.
Yeah, and obviously they didn't... Like, the Mary Celeste was obviously sailing completely fine.
Yeah.
But they also didn't know, like, really if there was any crazy damage. So they reached land on December 12th, in which the Mary Celeste was immediately impounded.
Okay.
So they kind of have a little, like, sea court things to do with boats and stuff.
Okay.
I didn't know what the specific court was. It just said in court, so I don't know if it's like a normal court or if it's like a... we weren't alive in those times.
No.
Things were probably a lot different. So they ended up in a court about the boat.
Okay.
So based on testimonies given, an attorney called Flood, which I just think was
it's ironic.
a great name
Beautiful
for
name.
this case. He was certain... to be fair, he was a very unliked man, I just want to point out also. But he was certain that a crime had been committed on the Mary Celeste. And he believed that alcohol was the cause. Again, all these things I'm going to say, we don't know for sure. So take it how you will. Believe what you will.
Yeah.
So, December 23rd, Flood began an investigation of the Mary Celeste. And he noted that they found cuts on the sides of the bow. Mm-hmm. He thought they were caused by some kind of sharp instrument. And he found what he thought were possible traces of blood on the captain's sword, remember, that was sheathed under the bed. His report emphasised that the ship did not appear to have been struck by any heavy weather. Like, it wasn't damaged in that kind of way. A further investigation, he believed that the cuts on the bow had been done on purpose. He also discovered similar stains on one of the ship's rails that he was like, oh, could be blood.
Okay.
And he also found, on some of the ship's rails, deep marks that he thought possibly could have been caused by an axe.
Okay.
These findings seemed to obviously strengthen his suspicions that, some kind of crime occurred.
Things were hinky.
That human wrongdoing happened rather than natural disasters on the Mary Celeste. So Flood concluded that he thinks his little theory was that the crew had gotten drunk off the cargo alcohol, killed the Briggs family for some reason, and then cut the bow to imitate a collision and fled in the lifeboat. He thought that the men that were on the Canadian ship that found the boat were hiding something a bit suspicious. And he thinks that there was plenty of time for them, if they needed to fake or alter the ship's logs.
Okay.
He also didn't think that the ship could have travelled as far as it did while deserted. Which, I mean, you never know how the sea's going to go, but I also see what he means, because it was quite some distance.
But if you hit the right current...
True, exactly. You don't know how, like, rough the waters
currents
were.
are really, really fucking powerful.
Yeah.
Like, all it had to do was hit the... And it was following the current line because they go along the coast.
Yeah.
And it was going round to Portugal, so that would be the current line. So, like...
So, a man called James Winchester arrived to where the Mary Celeste was on January the 15th. Obviously, if you remember from earlier, he recommended quite a few of the crew to go on this voyage, so he kind of knew Briggs and, like, the family and that kind of thing. So he came to ask if the Mary Celeste could be released in order to actually deliver its cargo that it was holding. However, Flood demanded 15,000 euros to release the boat with the cargo.
Why?
Don't know. It's just a dodgy guy. And obviously James Winchester did not have that much money. God knows how much that is in modern times. Can't tell you. So Winchester quickly became aware that Flood was very, let's just say, he was coming up with his theories and his conspiracies.
Yeah.
And now, because James Winchester had come to where the Mary Celeste was, Flood was now being like, oh, I'm going to involve you in my conspiracies. Because, you know, he knew some of the people. So he was now trying to think that that Winchester had formed a crew to kill Briggs and his family. Winchester, however, thought very highly of Briggs. And was sure that Briggs, as a captain, would never abandon his boat.
Okay, fair.
Which is kind of like, you know, captain goes down with the ship.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So he also couldn't understand where the fuck was Briggs, because he was like, no matter what would have happened on that boat,
that man would have died on the boat.
He would have stayed on the boat.
So where's the fucking body?
Yeah. Just generally, where is everyone? However, scientific analysis later determined that the substances on the boat and the sword were not blood.
Okay.
But it didn't say what they were.
Okay. It just ruled blood out.
Yeah.
Got it.
The marks on the bow were also determined to be non-man-made, caused by... so this made Flood reluctantly be like, okay, I will release the boat since I've
been proven to be an idiot.
Yeah, basically. So he released the Mary Celeste on February the 25th. The Canadian folks on their boat that did get their boat and bring it back did get a very small reward, but were very kind of offended because they didn't get the kind of reward
they should have got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So people were not really happy about the little tiny amount that they did get. So now we're going to get into possible explanations, what kind of happened, what happened to the boat afterwards.
I'm ready.
Because, it's already got a bit of a bad history.
Yeah.
And still, where the fuck are the crew?
Turn that thing into firewood and be done with it.
Yeah. So, despite Flood's theory of murder, it did seem a bit unlikely.
Yeah.
Suspicion of some kind of foul play did, though, remain.
Okay.
Because, like I said, even, from Winchester's account, Briggs would have never have left the boat.
Yeah.
So...
something is hinky.
Something clearly has happened here.
Yeah.
So some people thought that Winchester, like I said, was involved to some degree, even if it was for, insurance fraud. Considering that the ship had been very over-insured. Bit weird.
Okay.
Other people believed that the Canadian ship lured in wait for the Mary Celeste, lured Briggs and crew on board their ship, and then killed them. However, that's not a strong theory.
It doesn't explain the damage, what little there was.
Yeah, true, and apparently they would have been waiting a long time if they ever came across this boat. And they'd also have to know that this boat was coming.
Yeah.
And they were on 2 separate, like, journeys. Yeah. So, like, I don't know.
There wasn't any kind of similar area that they were in. Like, they were very separate. You know, when they stopped
Mary
communications.
Celeste only got there by pure accident.
Yeah.
Because it was not being driven. So I don't believe that one. Some people believe that Briggs and Morehouse, obviously the captain of the Canadian ship, were in cahoots, planning to sell the cargo and split the funds. However, no previous relationship between the two was ever known. I don't think they knew each other.
An American captain and a Canadian captain, like,
yeah, I don't know. No. Other people thought pirates, but if that would be the case,
there'd be a lot more violence.
There'd be a lot more violence and personal items, and there was some very valuable items were still on board the ship. And
not to mention,
all of them were still there.
The cargo was alcohol. And also you're telling me the pirates left behind the alcohol.
Exactly.
It's never happening.
Yeah, I don't think that's very viable. So, Briggs's cousin, Oliver Cobb, believed that the transfer of people to a lifeboat could have been for a temporary safety measure. From the state of the rigging and the ropes, kind of made it look like they planned to return if some danger passed, for example.
Okay.
However, if the line that was between the lifeboat and the ship was to break or part, those on the lifeboat would be left adrift.
Yeah.
And just stuck. So that kind of thing was like, oh, okay, that's one theory, but most people are like, also seems a bit illogical. Because they were like, if you were attach a line to a boat that was about to explode or sink, then, like, that just seems stupid.
Yeah.
So, most people also don't believe that. But again, it's a theory.
Yeah.
A lot of people believe that Briggs would have taken his chances on the Mary Celeste rather than a lifeboat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, you know, like I said, it was a big-ass ship.
But it wasn't armoured.
No, but it was well-built.
Yeah.
It had only just gone under a massive refit. So it had all been repaired. Yeah, it's just very weird. But yeah, like, from what I read, most people agreed that he would not have willingly
left the ship
to go in a lifeboat. Yeah. Arthur Putman, who was an investigator in sea mysteries in the early 20th century, said that his little theory said that to the ropes being cut, it seemed to have been done very quickly. And it said that the ship's logs mentioned several rumblings from the hold. Although this tends to be quite normal for a lot of ships, because, you know, the pressure and just general noises on a ship. He thinks that there had been possibly a more intense explosion in, like, the hold. And in response, a sailor ventured below deck with an open flame or a lit cigar that ignited fumes, causing an explosion violent enough to dislodge the top of the hatch, like I said, which had been found in an unusual position. DeVoe, who was the first person to go on the Mary Celeste from the Canadian ship, he offered an explanation based on the sounding rod that was found on the deck.
Okay.
He suggested that perhaps Briggs abandoned the ship after a fault sounding because of a malfunction, perhaps of the pumps, and that created a false sense, a false impression that the vessel was maybe accumulating a lot of water. Yeah. A severe water spout strike before the abandonment could explain the amount of water in the ship and the ragged state of the rigging and the sails. The low barometric pressure generated by the sprout could have driven water from the bilges up into the pumps, leading the crew to overestimate the amount that the boat was actually holding, and believed that she was in danger of sinking. Other explanations include, was there an iceberg? But again, there wasn't a lot to support that theory.
Not to mention it's pretty far south for an iceberg.
Yeah.
Like, you're talking about, like, the Atlantic.
The fear of running aground while becalmed, and a sudden submarine earthquake. However, evidence from this suggests that an iceberg, like you said, drifting so far south is quite improbable, and that other ships probably would have seen it and reported it, or at least logged it.
Yeah.
Others believed the most common theory is that, and it's a bit of, I don't know how I feel about it.
Okay.
So, because the ship was carrying so much alcohol, so apparently, back in the day.
Oh, back in the day.
Yeah. On board boats and things, you can have what's kind of like an alcoholic explosion. Then it basically means it doesn't cause mass damage. Like, it doesn't cause, like, a hole.
Mm-hmm.
And it also doesn't leave burn marks or soot behind.
Okay.
Yeah. And that possibly would have caused some kind of, like, chaos if, you know, they heard, like, a big explosion.
Got it.
In the cargo hold.
Yeah.
Then they'd be like, oh, what if she's sinking?
Yeah.
You know, because there obviously was some water in the hold. And maybe that's why, potentially, they decided to leave on the lifeboat.
I mean, he's an experienced captain. You wouldn't think he'd panic like that.
Exactly, but, you know, maybe he'd never dealt with cargo like that before, the amount of
Not
it.
to mention, I mean, his wife and kid are on board as well.
Exactly.
Like, I feel that's going to, like, skew any...
Exactly, but it still doesn't, like... Where's the line that goes from the lifeboat to the ship? Why would that have been...
Severed.
Yeah, if it even was severed. But there was nothing about a line. So yeah, I don't understand why they'd just get in the lifeboat and then just hope for the best. I don't really know. So, those are some theories to do with the boat.
I don't like any of them.
No, I don't. This is what happened to the boat afterwards.
Okay.
So, the Mary Celeste left Genoa on June 26, 1873.
Got it.
And arrived back in New York in September 19th.
Okay.
It quickly became a very unpopular ship, given obviously what had happened. You know, it kind of got that cursed reputation.
It's a ghost ship. You don't want to be on a ghost ship.
It is now officially classed as ghost ship because, you know, the crew are missing, no sign of the crew.
Yeah.
Suspicious kind of findings on the ship.
Yeah.
And the crew still have never been found or heard of to this day. No one really wanted the ship because of its reputation.
That's fair. That's
and history. So she was sold quickly for a very small amount, considering it was a giant ship.
For scrap, I'm presuming.
No? Not for scrap. She had a history also of later captains dying as well, pretty soon after getting the ship. So not just the ones that died before.
Did somebody, like, chop down
some... died afterwards.
Did somebody chop down some religious tree to build this boat? Because, Jesus.
Something weird was happening with the ship. Or it's just a lot of, unfair coincidences, clearly.
I don't believe in this many coincidences.
So basically, what happened to end the life of the Mary Celeste ship is, so, like I said, another few captains died.
Okay.
Then one guy got it. And he'd got it to use for a type of fraud. So he got, like, 2 other people together with him, formed a little trio, and on purposely crashed it onto a reef, which completely ripped out the bottom of the ship, making her beyond repair.
Okay.
And it was just stuck there.
And they got the insurance for it, I'm guessing.
And it was for the cargo on board, pretty much. But yeah, it was all to do with, like, fraud and that kind of thing. They ended up taking the cargo, selling that, so they did that. They got away with that. However, they ended up in court about it. People caught onto it quite fast.
Okay.
So the main guy that, whose main idea it was to commit this fraud, his surname was Parker. Parker was charged when his crimes were discovered, like I said. Though he managed to go free because of some technicalities.
Oh.
However, his reputation was just obliterated because everyone knew he was guilty. He was now pretty much just like
unemployable.
Yeah, and he died of poverty 3 months later. So that's another death to do with the Mary Celeste.
Damn.
The other two that he'd got into a scheme with him, who also decided to crash it with him.
Yeah.
One went mad.
Oh.
Just went absolutely insane. The other one killed himself.
Cursed ship.
And as an explanation for those three especially, the curse of the ship was given as an explanation.
So the curse of Mary Celeste,
the ship, yeah. So, the boat was just, or what was left of the boat, was just kind of stuck, stranded on this reef for years.
Okay.
So in 2001...
Got it.
There was an exploration of the sea and the ocean, stuff going on.
Nice.
And they found a bottom of a ship.
Oh.
Around a reef. And after doing some tests, they found that, hey, hold on, these metals and these kind of lumbers match, New York from the 1800s, and hold on, this is the bottom of the Mary Celeste.
Oi.
So it was found, or the remains were found in 2001. But yeah, so after, obviously, it became known as this cursed ship in the 1800s, it actually became more famous, not just for what had happened to do with its ghost ship crew and stuff, but because right before Sir Arthur Conan Doyle wrote Sherlock, he wrote a little short story about a sailor who was driven mad and, committed murders and stuff to do with the Mary Celeste.
Why?
And that made the Mary Celeste very popular in sort of an urban myth, ghost ship legend.
Okay.
So, yeah, that is...
The ship that drove its sailors insane.
Yeah.
Damn.
So I've got you a little picture of the Mary Celeste, and there was Briggs. But yeah, none of the crew have ever been heard or seen from, or bodies have never been found. No idea. The lifeboat was never found.
Okay.
Very strange.
That is some wild behaviour.
Yeah. And that was the Mary Celeste.
That is... Jesus.
But yeah, no answers for it. It will likely never be known.
Yeah.
What happens?
That is, I don't like any of those.
Yeah, I don't feel like any of those theories have, great evidence.
But at the same time, I don't... You know normally how each of us have, an idea. I haven't got a clue.
I want to say they left in a lifeboat. But also, I do believe that the captain goes down with the ship. So, I think it would have taken... I think he probably only left on a lifeboat because of his family.
Yeah.
But I think it would have taken a lot for him to leave the boat.
I'm personally, they do say that the rigging was damaged and a lot of the sails were damaged.
Yes, but not so much so that it couldn't be used or it couldn't be driven.
True, but
because the other people went onto the boat and literally drove it to the shore.
True.
Nothing happened. It was then taken out by other people and taken out, and they had no issues.
You know what my theory?
Go on.
They were drunk and they panicked.
Yeah, I think probably the alcohol weird explosion is probably the closest we'll probably get. Yeah, I think there was probably something. They might have panicked a bit more. He probably panicked more because his family was on board.
Yeah, because his family had never been on board before.
And he had an infant child on board.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know what would have happened to them upon the lifeboat.
I don't think they made it.
Oh no, I don't think they made it, but I don't know how far they would have travelled if the lifeboat would have got turned over.
But the thing is if there was bad weather and they'd been drinking alcohol, right, and that little explosion happened and they saw a load of water come in, right, and it's there's bad weather, there is that I'm thinking there might be a point where their like judgment is clouded enough for them to be like, fuck it, and get in the lifeboat.
Yeah.
But if you're in bad weather, the lifeboat's not going to have much of a better bet.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I do feel like in some way, I don't know how, but in some way I feel like Briggs's like thought process was
he would have
like,
been a bit biased
altered.
for his family being there.
Yeah.
For sure. Like, I think the importance of his family would have overcame his life and job as a captain.
Yeah. Yeah, because for all intents and like for everything that we know, this guy was a.
But I do feel like they all left together.
Yes. The ship was together. The crew was together wherever they went.
Yeah, because they all seem quite close. They all seem quite capable. But I can't imagine. Yes, even though he might have been prioritizing family, I can't imagine
him
he'd
leaving
have
them
left crew
behind.
behind.
No.
Yeah.
It is an interesting one though, because there is no answer and there's no way we're gonna get them.
Yeah, but that's one of the most famous ships, or famous ghost ships of all time.
Cursed ghost ships, because Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I do think it might have been a little bit cursed, because that's a lot of people dying around it.
Look, lots and lots and lots and lots of ships happen without any of those instances.
Yeah, exactly.
Even back in those days, right? And especially for like this ship had a lot of experienced captains on it.
Oh, it did, yes.
And by God,
Briggs
these
was probably
experienced.
the most experienced.
But by God, these experienced captains keep fucking up.
Yeah, and you know,
Or dying, or running into Briggs,
Yeah.
or whatever. Like, bro, what's going on with these captains?
I kind of like though that the ship was blamed for the last 3 people that fucked up the ship dying.
That's fair.
Yeah,
That's
I
fair.
do feel like, you know.
You're gonna kill the ship will kill you.
Yeah.
That's valid.
I get that.
That's valid.
But yeah, we hope you've enjoyed it. Like I said, it's a bit of a different one.
For
and
sure.
like I said, I have now proved that there is somewhat kind of crime because, you know, there was fraud happening at the end there.
Look, anything
there was
that involved...
crime.
There was a court.
There was missing people.
There was a court.
There was a fucking court, you're right.
Right? There was a court and there was an
There was
investigation.
an attorney.
Yeah.
Despite he was
And-
terrible.
And...
Named Flood.
There
What a
was...
guy.
And there was some bribery, so you know it's a crime.
So yeah, we're allowed to have this on here.
We've claimed this.
This is our podcast.
Yep.
Okay. But yes, we hope you enjoyed the little
That was quite good.
unique little mystery of the ghost ship Mary Celeste. Let us know what you think, what your theories are. And yeah, we'll see you for the next few episodes. We've got some good ones coming up. I know we've got Gypsy Rose coming up.
Oh,
is one of the next big ones.
Oi. I'm ready for
I
that.
can't think of what the rest of the next few ones we've got coming up are, but that's definitely one of the next ones.
My memory ain't no good.
You picked that one.
I know. I picked all of these.
Yeah, you did. So yeah, we hope you enjoyed this one. And
Have a good day, everybody.
Yeah.
Enjoy some sunshine if you're lucky enough to have it.
We are not.
We're not. It's like 17 degrees here.
So yeah, we'll hopefully see you in the next one. And we'll get back in touch when we're up with that one.
All right. Have a good day, folks.
I've been Beth.
I have been Becky.
And this has been BB True Crime.
Signing off.